Epilogue. So what an epilogue is what happens after the story is done. So it can't just end there with Brian derpily looking at a plane after being stuck in the woods for 2 months and saying, "Do you want something to eat?" That can't be the end of the story. So this is what's explaining what happened after he got picked up. This is what the epilogue is. The pilot who landed so suddenly in the lake was a fur buyer mapping Cree trappings, camps for future buying runs, drawn by Brian when he unwittingly, unwittingly turned on the emergency transmitter and left it going. The Cree move into the camps for fall and winter to trap, and the buyers fly from camp to camp on a regular route. When the pilot rescued Brian, he had been alone on the L-shaped lake for 54 days. 54 days. During that time, he had lost 17% of his body weight. He later gained back 6%, but had virtually no body fat. His body had consumed all the extra weight, and he would remain lean and wiry for several years. Many of the changes would prove to be permanent. Brian had gained immensely in his ability to observe what was happening and react to it. That would last him all his life. He had become more thoughtful as well, and from that time on, he would think slowly about something before speaking. Food, all food, even food he did not like, never lost its wonder for him. For years after his rescue, he would find himself stopping in the grocery stores to just stare at the aisles of food, marveling at the quantity and the variety. There were many questions in his mind about what he had seen and known, and he worked at research when he got back, identifying the game and berries. Gut cherries were termed choke cherries and made good jelly. The nut bushes where the fool birds hid were hazelnut bushes. The two kinds of rabbits were snowshoes and cottontails. The fool birds were ruffed grouse, also called fool hens by trappers for their stupidity. The small food fish were bluegills, sunfish, and perch. The turtle eggs were laid by a snapping turtle. And he had thought the wolves were timber wolves, which are not known to attack or bother people. The moose was a moose. There were also the dreams he had, many dreams about the lake after he was rescued. The Canadian government sent a team in to recover the body of the pilot, and they took reporters who naturally took pictures and film of the whole campsite, the shelter, all of it. For a brief time, the press made much of Brian, and he was interviewed for several networks, but the furrier died within a few months. A writer showed up who wanted to do a book on the complete adventure, as he called it, but he turned out to be a dreamer, and it all came to nothing but talk. Still, Brian was given copies of the pictures and tapes, and looking at them seemed to trigger the dreams. They were not nightmares, none of them were frightening, but he would awaken at times with them. Just awaken and sit up and think of the lake and the forest, the fire at night, the night birds singing, the fish jumping, sit in the dark alone and think of them, and it was not bad and would never be bad for him. Predictions are, for the most part, ineffective. But it might be interesting to note that had Brian not been rescued when he was, had he been forced to go into hard fall, perhaps winter, it would have been very rough for him. When the lake froze, he would have lost the fish. And when the snow got deep, he would have trouble moving at it. Game becomes seemingly plentiful in the fall. It's easier to see with the leaves off the brush. But in winter, it gets scarce and sometimes simply non-existent as predators like the fox, lynx, wolf, owls, weasels, fisher, marten, northern coyotes sweep through the areas and wipe things out. It is amazing that what a single owl can do to a local population of ruffed grouse and rabbits in just a few months. After the initial surprise and happiness from his parents at his being alive, for a week it looked as if they might actually get back together. Things rapidly went back to normal. His father returned to the northern oil fields where Brian eventually visited him, and his mother stayed in the city, worked at her career in real estate, and continued to see the man in the station wagon. Brian tried several times to tell his father, came really close once to doing it, but in the end never said a word about the man or what he knew, the secret. So I hope you enjoyed this book, and I hope you remember it forever and ever, especially gut cherries and turtle eggs and decomposing pilot skulls that had been eaten by the fish that were eaten by Brian. Because that's what I remember when I was your age. Anyway, I'm so glad I got to share this with you, and I hope you remember it and me forever and ever. I will see you soon. Bye.